What is going on, guys? My name is Taylor Stuber, and I'm here to break down this 11-game NBA slate on Draftkings and PrizePicks.com. If you guys are new here, welcome. If you guys are a returning viewer, a big shout out to you guys for returning and coming back to view my videos. Of course, guys, I am live an hour before lock every single day, so at 5 p.m. Central Time, I will be live breaking down all the latest breaking news. And with there being 11 games on the slate, we're sure to have some injury news, available within the next couple of hours, and I'll be there to break it down as well as answering as many questions as I possibly can before the slate ends up starting. But yeah, we have 11 games on the slate. If you guys want to know exactly what I'm playing on FanDuel, DraftKings, and PrizePicks every single day, you guys can check out my Patreon. That is linked down below in the description as well as the pinned comment. But let's just jump right into the slate. So we will start up top with the New York Knicks versus the Charlotte Hornets. A 223.5 over under. The Knicks are currently 1.5 point favorites. Big pace up spot for the New York Knicks here. This game should be competitive. The only injury they have right now is that Nerlens Noel is questionable. He ended up missing last game. If Mitchell Robinson and the New York Knicks weren't involved in a blowout last time out, it looked like Mitchell Robinson was on pace to play around 30 minutes. I think he would be squarely in play if there is no Nerlens Noel. Kemba Walker and Derrick Rose can continue to split all 48 point guard minutes, and they are priced down to $5,480. Now, who is going to get the lion's share of minutes each and every game is hard to decipher, but whoever ends up getting the 28-30 minutes each night is going to destroy their price tags. So taking a chance on these guys in tournaments, I think, is a pretty sharp thing to do, because it's every day. It's one of these guys is absolutely destroying their price tag. We saw last game, Derrick Rose ended up playing 30 minutes to the 18 minutes of Kemba Walker. Rose ended up scoring 47.25 fantasy points. So he played 30 minutes here, 29 minutes here, and definitely paid off a $4,800 price tag. And it's a similar situation with Kemba Walker. On the Hornets side, they are going to be without PJ Washington. So without PJ Washington, Mason Plumlee's minutes are more than secure. Looked like he was on pace to play 30 plus minutes. He played 35 minutes the game before with no PJ Washington. So as long as this game is competitive and he's out of foul trouble, he should be playing pretty big minutes. And $4,700 is just too cheap for him. Terry Rozier also too cheap of a price tag at $6,100 since returning from injury. He has been shooting quite a bit and should be playing 34, 36 minutes in these games. Gets a good matchup against the New York Knicks. Move on to the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Boston Celtics at 211.5 over under. The Bucks are currently 1.5 point favorites. The Bucks are going to be without Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, Dante DiVincenzo, and it looked like last game in the second leg of a back-to-back, they really scaled back the minutes, specifically of guys like Jrue Holiday and Bobby Portis, who are just now coming back from injuries. I do think that they returned to playing 32, 34 minutes in this game, so I think that $6,600 and $6,000 without Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton, these guys are just way too cheap. Don't mind Giannis Antetokounmpo, but $12,000 price tag is really lofty, and there's really not this blow you away kind of value on the slate where you can really justify getting up to him. And plus, he's my second favorite spend up option on the slate anyways. But I do like Jrue Holiday, Bobby Portis quite a bit. George Hill is $3,500, and he continues to start next to Jrue Holiday. So without Middleton, as long as he is in the starting lineup, and we already heard that Budenholzer likes George Hill out there next to Jrue Holiday for defensive reasons, and he's going to continue to play 32, 34 minutes, $3,500. He's going to be very low owned, and I think he's one of the better value plays on the slate as of right now. The Boston Celtics, they are going to be without Jaylen Brown and Broderick Thomas. Jason Tatum without Jaylen Brown since the beginning of last year at 34.2% usage rating, 11.9 total rebound percentage, a 21.1 assist percentage, while averaging 1.36 fantasy points per minute. So I like Jason Tatum quite a bit. He's been shooting a lot better recently. The volume has been there all year, but even more so without Jaylen Brown. And if this game is going to stay competitive, they're going to need Jason Tatum to have a big game. So at 10,100, where they priced up pretty much all of these studs a couple of slates ago, Jason Tatum is still sitting at 10,100, so I think that is very affordable for him. And then Dennis Schroeder at 6,200 has started each of the last 2 games with no Jaylen Brown, with a 26% usage rating in game 1, and then in game 2 he had a 31.3% usage rating, and he's playing big minutes. So 6,200 for Dennis Schroeder. I think you could do a lot worse. And then I do want to mention Josh Richardson down here at $3,300. Even especially in this matchup as well, the Celtics continue to only close with one big, one of the 2 of Al Horford and Robert Williams. And so that's going to add Josh Richardson into the closing lineups. And he's been playing mid-30s minutes, 31 and 33 minutes in each of the last 2 games with no Jaylen Brown since he's been closing. $3,300. I mean, I think nobody's going to be talking about Josh Richardson. I think he's definitely in play as a pretty decent value play. Move over to the Detroit Pistons versus the Cleveland Cavaliers at 200.5 over under. The Cavaliers are currently 4.5 point favorites. Kelly Olynyk is going to be out, as well as Chris Smith. But without Kelly Olynyk, Isaiah Stewart's minutes become much more secure. Foul trouble is a serious concern for Isaiah Stewart because he constantly finds himself in it. But if you told me ahead of time that he wasn't going to be dealing with foul trouble and this game was going to be as competitive as Vegas indicates, $4,300 is entirely too cheap for Isaiah Stewart. This is a huge boost in security and minutes for Isaiah Stewart without Kelly Olynyk. I think Trey Lyles might earn some extra minutes as well, and like we saw last game. But Cade Cunningham, $5,600. A 30.3% usage rating, 10.4 total rebound percentage, 17.5 assist percentage, but only averaging 0.89 fantasy points per minute. He's playing big minutes now, but he has all the opportunities in the world. He's on the brink of having a huge blow up game if he can actually shoot well. He shot decently last game, I guess, 8 for 18, but before that 6 for 17, 4 for 17, 2 for 14, 1 for 8. Just not shooting very well, but he's obviously getting the opportunities in the peripherals as well. So I like Cade Cunningham again. I think that later on in the year we're going to see him at that 7K, 8K price tag, and we're going to be kicking ourselves out we weren't on him more when he was in this 5K range. Then we move on to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They are going to be without Colin Sexton, Larry Markkinen, Kevin Love. Isaac Okoro returned last game, ended up playing 28 minutes in a 9-man rotation. It did kind of concern me with Ricky Rubio going to the bench. His minutes did get cut back a bit, only played 28 minutes when I was expecting him to play 30 to 31 if he was in the starting lineup. But him, with his minutes being staggered with Darius Garland, it showed to be very, very good, because whenever Rubio was out there on the court, he ran the entire offense, and I expect a similar situation here. So $5,700 is probably a little bit too cheap for Ricky Rubio. And then Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and Darius Garland on the Cavs should be playing massive minutes. Evan Mobley's minutes got cut a bit short in the first half last game just because he was playing poorly. But in the second half, he really took it up a notch, had it over a 30% usage rating in that game. But Jared Allen, $7,800, I mean, should be able to absolutely abuse this undersized Detroit Pistons front court, especially without Kelly Olynyk. Love going back to the well with the Cavaliers because we have so much security in the minutes, and you know where that production is going from with that team. Move over to the Portland Trailblazers versus the Houston Rockets at 223 over under. The Trailblazers are currently 6.5 point favorites. Norman Powell is questionable, so if Norman Powell is indeed going to miss this game, it's only an hour after lock. We will likely see Nasir Little enter the starting lineup. He would be a pretty solid value play at $3,200. Remember, we were paying about $4K for him not too long ago when Norman Powell was injured. And then I think Anthony Simmons earned some extra minutes as well. I think this matchup is a bit better suited for a guy like Simmons as well, so definitely have to wait out for that injury news. And then Damian Lillard, the last 3 games have been shooting a lot better. The volume is still there, and so at $9,800 on DraftKings, where they priced up all of the other studs, $9,800 for Damian Lillard actually seems like a steal right now. Really the only guys that I'm considering from the Portland side. On the Houston Rockets, they are going to be without John Wall. Alperen Sengun is going to return after his 1-game absence last time out due to illness. But Christian Wood, Kevin Porter Jr., Jayshawn Tate, and Jalen Green should continue to see big minutes in competitive game. It's only a 6.5 point spread right now. So if you're playing some of these Portland guys like Damian Lillard, I would make sure to bring it back with a Houston guy. I would prefer the cheaper options, maybe like Kevin Porter Jr. and Jayshawn Tate, where I know that their minutes are very, very secure. We get the Phoenix Suns versus the Memphis Grizzlies at 222.5 over under. The Suns are currently 3-point favorites. The Suns are going to be without Dario Saric and DeAndre Ayton. Landry Shamet is questionable. JaVale McGee started yet again for DeAndre Ayton, but again, Frank Kaminsky is the guy who's getting the majority of the minutes. Now, this matchup suits JaVale McGee a bit better, in my opinion, whether Steven Adams ends up playing or not on the other side. So at $4,100, I mean, he's an interesting tournament option. I can't pay $5.5K for Frank Kaminsky when I know that at any time JaVale McGee, like 2 games ago, could play 26 minutes to the 22 minutes of Frank Kaminsky, and you kind of want those around 30 minutes from Frank Kaminsky to pay off that price tag. JaVale McGee at $4,100, I mean, even in limited time can pay off his price tag. Scored 25 fantasy points in just 16 minutes last time out. I think this is a very good matchup for him. Really just considering him, I think Mikal Bridges is probably a little bit too cheap. And then Chris Paul should absolutely pick apart this team. He's really only disappointed once recently. That was last time out where the assists just really weren't there. And then 38 fantasy points. I mean, you're not necessarily drawing dead because of that. And then the game before, the game blew out. So, or I can't remember what the situation was. They just cut his minutes back. And so he didn't get there. But I do like Chris Paul quite a bit as well. On the Memphis Grizzlies side, they're going to be without Dillon Brooks, Killian Tilly. Steven Adams is questionable in this game. So Dillon Brooks returned last game, came off the bench, kind of ate into the minutes of Desmond Bane. Bane was in serious foul trouble the entire game before eventually fouling out. But Dillon Brooks is now out. And then Steven Adams is questionable. So if Steven Adams is ruled out, we will likely see Brandon Clark enter the starting lineup. He would see a pretty big increase in minutes. He's been a very good per minute producer across the course of his career. Or we could see Jaren Jackson Jr. slide down to the 5, and maybe a guy like Kyle Anderson joins the starting lineup. I think regardless, with no DeAndre Ayton on the opposite side, I think that there's a good chance that Jaren Jackson Jr. plays the majority of his minutes at the 5, and we see a lot of these wings pick up extra minutes like Melton, Bane, and Kyle Anderson. Kyle Anderson would be my favorite of all of them if Jaren Jackson Jr. is starting at the 5, but we're definitely going to have to wait on the news of Steven Adams. Move over to the Sacramento Kings versus the Oklahoma City Thunder, a 219 over-under. The Kings are currently 4.5 point favorites. The Kings are going to be healthy outside of the questionable tag guys like Tyrese Halliburton and Terrence Davis. Both those guys ended up missing last game, so we saw Buddy Hield enter the starting lineup again. If they are out again, I love Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield was going to play big minutes, but he was playing pretty poorly. He went to the locker room early, ended up coming back, closing out the game, but it looks like he'll play mid-30s minutes. Obviously a great matchup against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Davion Mitchell should pick up big minutes as well without Halliburton and Terrence Davis. But again, this game starts an hour after lock, so we might get this news during the live stream. We'll make sure to break it down. And then De'Aaron Fox, I mean, my God, this guy recently has just been much more aggressive than he has been usually. I mean, look at the free throw attempts. It just shows how much he's getting to the line. 11 and 8 free throw attempts the last 2 games, 19, 24 shot attempts. So if he's going to continue to be this aggressive against the Oklahoma City Thunder in a game that's supposed to be competitive, only a 4.5 point spread as of right now, $8,400 is entirely too cheap for De'Aaron Fox. And I think with everybody being priced up, especially the studs, $8,400 for De'Aaron Fox seems like a very, very good deal. And then Harrison Barnes at $7,400, I think is a very solid cash game option over on Draftkings. But where I really want to play Harrison Barnes is over here on Prize Picks. If you guys keep watching, we'll add one other player to this. If you guys played yesterday with me from the YouTube video, I just gave away 3 of my favorite plays, and I ended up mix and matching them for a plus $300, plus $300, plus $300, and then plus $500 when we ended up putting all 3 of them together because we took the overs on Bam Adebayo, Paul George, Precious Achiuwa. I mix and matched them and then put them all 3 together. They all 3 ended up hitting. So we're going to try to run it back today in today's video. And the first play that we're going to give away is Harrison Barnes over 32 fantasy points. As long as this game is competitive, he should play around 37-38 minutes. Obviously, the only time that he didn't hit it was last game, and that game ended up blowing out. He didn't play in the fourth quarter, but he would have likely hit that if he had played in the fourth quarter. So I love the over on Harrison Barnes here on Prize Picks. Then on the Thunder side, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at $8,800. I think this is actually my favorite game stack of the night from a tournament aspect when given ownership, because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, De'Aaron Fox, I think are going to be very low owned. And then I think Giddey, Bazley, Dort are fine secondary options. I do expect Jeremiah Robinson-Earl to grab the start here. They typically start him against the smaller teams. Against Rashawn Holmes, that makes a bit more sense than playing Derek Favors, but not really considering the Joe Rogan experience right there. Move over to the Brooklyn Nets versus the New Orleans Pelicans at 215 over under. Nets are currently 9-point favorites. The Nets are going to be without Kyrie Irving and Nicholas Claxton. Kevin Durant and James Harden obviously get a great matchup here, but there is serious blowout risk with or without Brandon Ingram playing on the opposite side. LaMarcus Aldridge, I mean, this dude has been going off, but he is only playing low 20s minutes. The usage is definitely there. A lot of the times his usage is around 28-30%. So at $4,100, you could definitely do worse, but with center-only eligibility, I'm probably avoiding LaMarcus Aldridge and the entire Brooklyn Nets team. Move over to the New Orleans Pelicans. Zion Williamson, Dalton Hobbs are out. Brandon Ingram and Najee Marshall are questionable. Brandon Ingram got in a practice the last couple times, so he's very, very close to returning. If he is active, now I'm not considering anybody on this team, but if he is ruled out, I think Jonas Valanciunas, Devontae Graham, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Josh Hart, who was ejected last game, I think they get pretty considerable boost, but we're going to have to wait on that news. Dallas Mavericks versus San Antonio Spurs at 219 over under. The Mavericks are currently 3-point favorites. The Mavericks are going to be without Maxi Kleber. Kristaps Porzingis 2 games ago was dealing with foul trouble. Last game, he ended up playing the full extent of the game, played 32 minutes. So if he's going to play around 32 minutes against the San Antonio Spurs without Jakob Poeltl, I think Porzingis at $6,600 is entirely too cheap. Not really considering Luka today or anybody else on this team. Really just focusing on Kristaps Porzingis from the Mavericks side. Then on the San Antonio Spurs, they are going to be without Jakob Poeltl, Zach Collins, Jock Landale, Keita Bates-Diop is questionable. The center minutes continue to be split, all 48 minutes split between Drew Eubanks and Thaddeus Young, but the margins have been getting thinner and thinner, going the way of Drew Eubanks. I still prefer Thaddeus Young, but with the price raises on Draftkings, I'm not really considering either of them. I don't mind Thaddeus Young over on FanDuel, where you get the steal and block upside with 3 fantasy points per each stock. And then DeJounte Murray at $9,400. I mean, I think he's in a pretty good steal upside situation against a Dallas Mavericks team that is prone to giving up turnovers. Move over to the Atlanta Hawks versus the Denver Nuggets at 214.5 over under. The Nuggets are currently 4.5-point favorites. The Hawks are going to be without Onyeka Okongwu. DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan Bogdanovic are both game time decisions. Now, this actually changes a lot on this slate, because if we knew ahead of time that Bogdanovic and Hunter were going to be ruled out, I would be all over Kevin Huerter and Cam Reddish. They were both out last game, and we hopped onto a lot of Huerter and Cam Reddish on DraftKings. Once we got that news, Kevin Huerter and Solomon Hill were actually the 2 guys that ended up starting. Kevin Huerter played 39 minutes in the absence of those guys. Cam Reddish played 30.5 minutes off the bench. They would be the 2 best value plays on the entire slate if we got word ahead of time that they would end up missing. But this game starts 2 hours after lock, and they are game time decisions already. So I'm not sure we're going to get that news ahead of time. But I think there is a decent likelihood that they do end up sitting. And then Clint Capella at $7,000, I think is just still too cheap. We've seen in the past against guys like Rudy Gobert where they really try to match his minutes up against them. So we could see Capella playing around 36 minutes here, average 1.2 fantasy points per minute since the beginning of last year. $7,000, very, very affordable. And for the second play, we keep going back to the well with these same plays, but they keep hitting for us. So I'm going to continue to take the overs on Clint Capella fantasy points. I like the over Harrison Barnes, 32 fantasy points, and the over Clint Capella at 31 fantasy points. I think this is a very strong 2-pick over here on Prize Picks. And if you guys are watching this and you guys want to tail, make sure to sign up and deposit using code Taylor, Taylor, for a 100% match bonus up to $100. And if you're going to play, make sure to get it in early because these numbers will move drastically. And I really like Harrison Barnes and Clint Capella for the overs over on Prize Picks. Move over to the Denver Nuggets versus they are going to be without Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Vlatko Cancar. Nikola Jokic is going to return from his one-game suspension. He is my favorite spin-up option. That is very expensive. Like if you guys have the money to spend up on anybody, it's going to be Nikola Jokic for me. Without Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray since the beginning of last year in 499 minutes, he has a 35.7% usage rating, 20.4 total rebound percentage, 38.4 assist percentage while averaging 1.81 fantasy points per minute. I think he should be able to do whatever he wants, facilitating this entire team against this Atlanta Hawks defense, which really isn't all that impressive. Pretty middling defense. And then I think that without Michael Porter Jr., Will Barton averaging 1.04 fantasy points per minute with Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray off the court since the beginning of last year. He should play mid to high 30s minutes in this game. $6,900 is a pretty lofty price tag for him, but I think he could definitely pay it off here. Then I think Aaron Gordon is probably too cheap at $5,500 as well, and I like Aaron Gordon's over fantasy points over here on Prize Picks. If you guys wanted to add a third, it would be Aaron Gordon right here. They had his projection down really, really low. Yeah, only 23 fantasy points. We already added that to the Patreon play. I'm sure that projection is going to move sooner rather than later. Move over to the Chicago Bulls versus the Golden State Warriors at 222 over under. The Warriors are currently 5.5 point favorites. The Bulls are going to be without Nikola Vucevic and Patrick Williams. So now, without Nikola Vucevic, we're either going to see Tony Bradley or Elias Johnson start in this matchup. Now, Tony Bradley is usually the direct backup to Nikola Vucevic, so I think he gets the first grab at the starting spot here. But I do think that this matchup probably suits Elias Johnson a lot better. They probably end up splitting the all 48 center minutes, so I think both of them are viable at $3,100 and the bare minimum $3,000. Whoever is starting is my preferred option, while the other will be a good tournament pivot because they're likely to be lower owned. And then I think DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine are just going to have to shoot so much today. They are going to shoot a ton to keep this game competitive. And at $8,500, $8,000, I think they are two very, very good cash game plays, tournament plays. I mean, they're just going to have to shoot so much to keep this game competitive. The Golden State Warriors, they're going to be without Klay Thompson, James Wiseman, and then Draymond Green and Damian Lee are both questionable. I think Steph Curry is a bit too expensive for me. Would be tournament only. Wouldn't consider it in cash games. But if Draymond Green does in fact miss this game, I think Nemanja Bjelica could get a ton of burn. And, we can kind of wait because they are all in the same game. Obviously, Tony Bradley and Elias Johnson, whoever is starting, is going to be very, very high owned. If Draymond Green is ruled out, you could make a direct pivot to a guy like Nemanja Bjelica. And I think you'll have huge ownership leverage right there. And I could definitely see Bjelica outscoring those guys. Especially because last game, Kevon Looney, when Draymond Green left early, they closed with Kevon Looney, which is very rare. They usually just go small ball, but that was against the Minnesota Timberwolves and Karl Anthony Towns. So maybe it was more of a matchup thing, which is what I'm assuming here. So I think in a smaller matchup against Chicago with no Nikola Vucevic, that this game ends up running small again. And so Nemanja Bjelica, pending Draymond Green's injury status, could be a very, very good option today. Move over to the Minnesota Timberwolves versus the Los Angeles Lakers at 223 over under. The Lakers are currently 2-point favorites. The Timberwolves have no injuries. Patrick Beverley continues to play big minutes starting next to D'Angelo Russell. And he's only $4,200, gets a great matchup against the Los Angeles Lakers. We saw the other night against the Warriors, he played 35 minutes, and a lot of that had to do with they just had him out there chasing around Steph Curry. We could see a similar situation here against Russell Westbrook. We know that they have just like the weirdest beef. And I'm expecting him to play, big minutes in this game. He's probably going to reach mid-30s minutes yet again. He's only $4,200, one of my favorite value plays on the slate. And then with how atrocious the Lakers defense has been, I think Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards are squarely in play. Anthony Edwards scored 48 real points last time out. Move on to the Los Angeles Lakers. They are going to be without LeBron James, Kendrick Nunn, Trevor Ariza, Talon Horton-Tucker, Austin Reeves, and then Rajon Rondo is questionable. So without Rondo last game, I was really wondering what they were going to do with the backup ball handler, who it's going to end up being. It ended up being Malik Monk. He was the main ball handler off the bench for Russell Westbrook. Ended up playing 35 minutes. He was playing very well, so I'm not expecting him to play 35 minutes again if Rondo is out. But I do think that he receives the biggest uptick in minutes without Rondo. So definitely going to have to wait on that news. Unfortunately, this is the last game of the slate, so we're really not going to know ahead of time. But yeah, overall, I think Westbrook, Anthony Davis, I don't think it's like the best matchup. It's not the worst either. It's a pretty neutral matchup. But the Cadets production between the two just can carry over any matchup. And so I think that they're both definitely in play today. And I think Anthony Davis, I prefer him to Russell Westbrook for sure today. And then Carmelo Anthony, I mean, he's going to continue to play 34, 35 minutes a game without LeBron James, because they're going to continue to close with Anthony Davis at the 5. And Carmelo is going to end up joining that closing unit. So at $5,600, he is pretty scoring dependent, but he's going to shoot a lot. And yeah, I don't mind him at $5,600. Again, guys, I will be live streaming an hour before lock at 5 p.m. Central Time, going over all the latest breaking news as well as answering as many questions as I possibly can. But I appreciate you guys being here. Best of luck tonight, and until next time, peace.